Hi and welcome back to Bike Speeds. Everyone's changing to disc brakes, but are rim brakes still worth it? In this video we're going to talk about all the pros and cons of rim brakes. So let's get started. So the first and main benefit to rim brake bikes is they are much more affordable and generally cheaper than a disc brake bike. That's great for anyone starting out with cycling because you can get into a much higher group set and specification of bike than perhaps you can with a disc brake bike. The bikes tend to depreciate just slightly quicker than a disc brake bike because disc is the buzzword, everyone wants disc brake, so the rim brake bikes tend to depreciate a little bit more, which means on the used market there are really great buys out there with rim brakes. But likewise, if you're looking to replace components or build bikes, a rim brake Ultegra is currently retailing at around about £75. A Ultegra direct mount caliper for a disc brake and the disc itself, the rotor, which you have to have extra, is retailing at around about the £150 mark at the moment. So they're significantly more expensive than rim brakes. So that's why they are great value for money and make great buys for getting into cycling or for getting higher spec bikes. One of the great things with rim brakes is they are super adjustable and super tolerant. So if you have a rim brake that isn't quite square to the wheel will still spin, it will still brake without any issues. You can deal with that on the fly or when you get home, but they're just very tolerant of not being quite set up correctly. Disc brakes have to be absolutely precise and spot on to work. There's always going to be someone with you in your ride or that you've got with a multi-tool that can deal with any of the problems that arise, any of the points that need adjusting. There's no mystery to rim brakes. Everybody understands them and everyone can deal with them. Rim brakes really are much lower maintenance than disc brakes. They really are a set and forget. The only thing you have to worry about is the surface of your brake pads themselves wearing, but they will do tens of thousands of miles between services. Disc brakes, you'll be in and out of your bike shop sorting out problems with squealing and cleaning the pads, cleaning the discs. The pads last less time, but with rim brakes they do last the mileage. So for me personally, one of the most important things about rim brakes is they're silent. They don't squeal. You've only got to listen to the Pro Peloton to realise how noisy disc brakes are or can be, and they're quite tricky to solve. They can be solved, but it could be a ride or two before you get that noise back, or you may go months. You just never quite know. But at least with rim brakes, they are silent. So in general, rim brakes are very good, but there are some pitfalls and negatives associated with rim brakes, but it's not often the fault of the calipers itself. In this instance, we've got a carbon fibre wheel. Carbon fibre and rim brakes are not very good in the wet. In the dry, they're perfect, but in the wet, you could come into some trouble. I myself had an accident because I was riding a carbon fibre wheel with a rim brake in the wet, and I couldn't scrub the speed off quick enough. It wasn't braking down and I ended up having quite a bad accident. So always check your braking surface on the wheel itself, not associated to the brake, but just make sure there's a good braking surface. Mavic themselves do a fantastic braking surface on their carbon fibre wheels, and it's a good combination then with a rim brake. But you just have to be careful of these in the wet. Often good to have an aluminium braking surface for your wet weather riding and your carbon fibre wheels for dry and best. Following on from that last point, the main drawback of rim brakes is performance over disc brakes. It's been widely documented that disc brakes outperform rim brakes, and they do. You can't get away from that. They're more stable in all weather conditions on disc. The performance is better at the stopping performance. They're a little bit more stable because you're not braking on the outer rim edge of the wheel, you're braking in the centre. Everything about them is a step up from rim brakes, but these still have their place, so they're good enough for most riders. One of the other problems you've got with rim brakes is they're fast becoming obsolete. This is my own Cannondale. We were going to upgrade this to Dura-Ace, but we couldn't marry up all the components of the group set to be able to achieve that conversion because we're looking at new old stock, which is the issue you're going to have with any rim brake system. Most notably on things like the Giant Propel, where they have an aero system at the front that is specific to that frame. That's now new old stock and it's hard to find those components. So if you are buying a rim brake bike, do check out that you can actually get the components to service your bike moving forwards. Manufacturers now are designing all their frames around disc brake bikes, so this is only going to be an ongoing issue moving to the future, that these become more and more obsolete and harder to find parts for. So to summarise, rim brakes really do represent great value for money, especially on the used market. Never rule out a rim brake bike. Don't get carried away with the spec of a bike, wanting disc brakes and maybe getting that at the detriment of a greater spec bike. So always be looking for spares availability as well. Make sure that if you've got integrated brakes on the front or the rear, that you can get the components for those. Make sure that it is a serviceable bike moving forwards, that you'll get some time out of that bike and some usage. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please do like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you again very, very soon. Bye for now.